Now this torque is important to compress the crush washers to prevent any leak. 16 foot-pounds. That's one, and that's the other. You can torque it down as well. Good. And within 5 minutes, we need to torque these down to 9 foot-pounds. Good. And these bolts get torqued to 16 foot-pounds. Then we could torque it down to 51 foot-pounds. Good. And then finally, we could torque down all 3 of our pulley bolts to 16 foot-pounds. So once those are on, we could torque them down to 9 foot-pounds in a crisscross pattern to evenly seat the valve covers so we don't have any leak. Finally, torque them down to 75 foot-pounds. Then we could torque all 4 nuts down to 80 foot-pounds. Beautiful. Tightening down the strut fork to control arm bolt to 47 foot-pounds, which in this case is 66 foot-pounds. The thread locker prevents vibrations from loosening the bolts as you drive, and it also helps prevent the threads from rusting wherever the thread locker is applied. Good. And then torque them down to 36 foot-pounds. And then we could torque down both rear bolts on the shackle to 80 foot-pounds. Good. And torque down the front bolt as well to 80 foot-pounds. Torque down the caliper bolt to 20 foot-pounds. Torque it down to 35 foot-pounds. And finally torque it down to 43 foot-pounds. So torque the control arm bolt to 76 foot-pounds. Torque down your lug nuts in a star pattern so the wheel tightens evenly. Most wheels are torqued between 80 and 100 pound-feet, and in this case I'm torquing them to 100. Now this bolt gets torqued down to 25 pound-feet of torque. Torque down to 90 pound-feet. That's one, and that's the other. Then torque this axle nut to 135 foot-pounds. Torquing it down. And torque it down to 40 foot-pounds. Torque each one down to 150 foot-pounds. That's the top, and that's the bottom. Torque down to 150 foot-pounds. That's one, and that's the other. And we can't forget about this K-member bolt, which I added a little bit of medium strength thread locker to, and this gets torqued down to 65 foot-pounds. These get torqued down to 95 foot-pounds. That's one, and that's the other. And now we need to add some thread locker to each of these studs so that we could install the wheel spacer. Now let's get a screwdriver in the cooling vane and torque the lug nuts in a star pattern to 100 foot-pounds. And finish tighten the lug nuts in a star pattern to 100 foot-pounds. Very important to torque down the seat bolts so they don't loosen up. And then torque it down to 40 foot-pounds. And finally, we could torque down all the caliper bolts to 76 foot-pounds of torque. Then install the wheel and torque down the bolts in a star pattern. And these bolts should be tightened down to 25 foot-pounds. A little trick I use to keep track of the bolts I torque down is to mark them with a paint marker once it's torqued. This helps a lot because you're going to be torquing these bolts down in a crisscross pattern. That way the diff cover compresses the gasket evenly for a leak-free seal. And torque down the seatbelt bolt, same as the driver's side. Torque down all the bolts. Now we can torque the rear lower control arm bolt to 50 foot-pounds. Good. And torque each one down to 10 foot-pounds so we don't get any vacuum leaks. And we're going to be tightening these bolts to 20 foot-pounds of torque. The reason why we're going in a crisscross pattern from the middle outwards is so that the gasket gets crushed evenly and creates a nice tight seal. Perfect. 70 foot-pounds. And torque down the other bolt to 70 foot-pounds as well. Good. And tighten it down to 50 foot-pounds. Good.